Welcome to my PowerPoint about Skies Forever Blue. I'm going to talk about the song and the video, so if you haven't watched it, please do that, because I'm not going to show most things. However, if you have clicked on this, I'm going to assume you have already watched it. A bit of background information for those who don't know: it's made by BrownieFox and Itoki Hana. It has been released on Deltarune's 4th anniversary. It hasn't been explicitly stated to be related to Deltarune or Undertale, but also no comment to the contrary has been made. It has been made in cooperation with the creators of Amori, the video, and as the text says, it has been made in quite a rush, so we can assume it has been explicitly made for the anniversary. This doesn't mean it is connected or isn't connected, just giving you that information, draw your own conclusions. There's a lot of discussion on that online, even to this day. So, a bit of basic info. Who's singing? Always the most important part for a song. It's a pink girl. She's a video game character who is the secondary protagonist from what we can tell, and basically travels with the protagonist until the end of the game and even has the final lines of the game. What is she singing about? She is singing about loving spending time with you, the target of the song, and that she loves you but struggles to say it, and always has to say it another day. Who is the target of the song? We can assume it's the protagonist of the video game, the blue boy, who is basically the standard fantasy RPG, JRPG protagonist. Reminds me a lot of Dragon Quest. But there's a twist: the target of the song isn't actually the blue boy, it's you, the player. We can talk a bit about the mechanics. I think most people understand this, but if you don't, I think it will become a bit clearer. So the basic summary with this understanding is: the pink girl is a video game character. A player plays through the game a lot and plays it for a final time. This is the first half of the video. During this time she acts like she is supposed to, and the game is completely normal. But during the lyrics of the song she laments that she's unable to convey her true feelings, and the final line for this game is that she has to say what she actually wants to say another day, which she actually never gets to do. During the middle of the video there's an intermission. The player stopped playing the game and grew up, as we can see on the right. A lot of other discarded toys and other things that like a youth would have had growing up. I assume the player had been in their early teens at the oldest at the start of the video, and at this time they could be anything from like young adult to like middle-aged, but I think the vibe I'm getting is like young adult, maybe mid to late 20s. I think 30s would be a bit late, but you can always find your old children toys if your parents haven't thrown them away. No? Then there's the second half. They return as a young adult, in my assumption, play the game for an actual final time. When they restart the game, the world is destroyed, but the girl remembers, and we can assume that she also remembers every previous play from the vibe we are getting from the lyrics. But during this final playthrough, the game glitches out and starts to break. And weird, like there are these tears in the screen and weird pixels. But maybe related to that, maybe unrelated to that, it isn't explicitly stated. The girl decides to be more proactive. She drags the protagonist along, whether they like it or not, and in the end she even gets to confess her true feelings. And then the final screen is the save data being deleted, no save data being there anymore. I believe that this is due to internal batteries running out. If you have played the original Pokemon Gold and Silver, maybe you know this. I think those are the most popular games with that issue. They have an internal battery for like in-game night and day, but when those batteries are empty, all saves are deleted and you are no longer able to save. Well, you can open the save menu and anything, but once you turn the game off and on again, there's no save data. And this reminds me a lot of that. And we can assume that this is basically the death of the pink girl. Maybe not, because she can remember previous saves, so apparently her consciousness is above save data, but I think the vibe of the ending pretty much implies that this has been her end. Now, how does this actually work? Like a video game character gaining consciousness, what does she know? How does she feel? it's pretty clear that she is aware that she's in a video game in the lyrics. Like, she talks about how she's just a bunch of color for the player, basically a bunch of pixels, and that she is on the screen and that batteries run dry. The entire setting of the game seems to be medieval fantasy, so these terms pretty much seem to imply knowledge of the technology the game is being played on. Now, how much does she know beyond being in a game? I'm pretty sure she can understand what the player is saying, because even if she says the only things you say are yes or no, later she elaborates and asks the player questions that possibly couldn't be answered with things like goodbye and come with me, and she's enthralled when words flow to her, so I'm pretty sure that she can at least hear the player. I don't know how much beyond that she can understand, but I'm pretty sure if a player talks to themselves, or maybe talks to a friend in the room or their parents, then the pink girl can hear that. This is also confirmed in the most important line. When you made my name the same just as the one you love, then you knew. This solidifies basically that she is talking to the player and that she has outside knowledge, because she can only know this if she hears the player. She also directly references being named by the player, which is a game mechanic again, and she understands that she's in the game, because it's not impossible, but it's improbable that what she called just her neighbor has been the one who named her without it being referenced inside the video at all. It's also weird if a player character had a different love interest that doesn't show up in the game. So we can assume that this is a crush of the player or a love of the player, and that the pink girl somehow understands this, which probably isn't able to be conveyed in in-game dialogue options, so we can assume that the player maybe talked to themselves, or maybe they even had the one they love in the same room, and the pink girl somehow came to understand this. Now, what happens when the game isn't being played? I believe pink girl is conscious when the game isn't being played. She says how you do and where you been and why you never call, say it all. So this implies there has been some time that has been passed between the first half of the video and the second half of the video. During this entire time, the game had been turned off, so no in-game time has passed. It has been between two playthroughs even, so it doesn't make sense that she was aware during that time. So we can assume that during this entire time she was conscious, but nothing happened. I think she is like stuck in this darkness. We see her trip in during the end of the first half of the video. When the player turns the game off, she stays in this darkness for like a frame. But I assume like her consciousness is trapped in this darkness even longer. So what are the skies forever blue? At first we could like assume, oh, skies forever blue, blue skies, that's like a dreamy image, she's just saying that she's happy, but I think it's also a bit more literal in this sense. She lives in darkness when the game isn't being played, so as long as the player is playing the game, she can actually see the blue sky. She actually lives in a world which has color and feelings and emotions, so she is just happy that she lives in a world as long as the player is playing the game, because the alternative is darkness. So in this sense it's a bit darker, which brings us to the connections to Deltarune. A lot of people have probably already drawn the connections, but let's be thorough here. There are a few obvious parallels. For example, the pink girl is like the darkness. When the darkness aren't being played with, they are trapped in darkness, alone, scared, despair happens. She doesn't seem to really despair, but not all darkness we meet in Deltarune despaired, so it's only how they cope with this, but it is a rather dreary existence as we experience in the game. And the player of Skies Forever Blue seems to be like the lightness in Deltarune, who bring the darkness purpose. The player brings the pink girl purpose. As long as they pay attention to the other, they are happy. We can especially see like the contrast or parallel, depending on what you look at, between the king and the pink girl. Like the king was happy as a toy, being played with the lightness, but once the lightness trapped him away or no longer gave him attention and they have been left in darkness, they started to resent the lightness, while the pink girl focuses more on the positive side. She's happy as long as she's being played with, but that implies that she isn't happy when she isn't being played with. We also have a parallel between the protagonists. The player character and the player are not the same thing. Some characters are aware of this. In Skies Forever Blue, it's the pink girl. However, it's not as clear whether the player character has their own consciousness. As you can see in the frame in the bottom left, I feel like this is the place that shows the most agency from the player character, because this is the restart of the game, and I don't think the player has that kind of input, that kind of trying to save an NPC from the last game. So this could be implied to be the blue boy's consciousness, but it isn't that important in Skies Forever Blue, while it is a lot more important in Deltarune, where, of course, Chris and the player are not the same thing. And there, Chris, probably Radsay, I'd say like 95%, and whoever's at the beginning, I say Gasta with like 90%, but I'm going to put a question mark where for the doubters. They are also aware of this disconnect, so this is also something shared between two media. There's also the connection about how the things are supposed to be. For example, the pink girl clearly knows more than her role of an in-game character should. She knows about batteries, she knows about the player's love life, she knows about how much time passes outside the game. But nothing of that makes it into a character and the way she acts in the first half of the video. She still follows the script. So she has an understanding that there's like a way things are supposed to be, or maybe she has no choice and has to act that way. Definitely there is like this through line that this is how the game is, this is how I must act. Only in the final playthrough, when the game starts glitching out, she follows her heart and breaks with the script and even confesses her feeling. Now, whether she breaks the game, or she is allowed to do that because the game breaks, or the two things are entirely unrelated, is up to the viewer's interpretation. But there's definitely this fate and this split with fate, which we also have in Deltarune. We have the legend, which is basically saying, okay, this is how things are supposed to pan out. These are the three heroes. They seal the Darkfall. They banish the Ancients' Heaven. We have like a clear line. This is how things are supposed to be. We also have a line multiple times being said, no one can choose who they are in this world. Again, say, okay, we might have different ambitions, different ideas, but this is how things are. Even in the toy in the hospital, tells you about, like, set path. There is no difference, there is no alternative. This is in chapter 1 and in chapter 2. But we can also break with this set path. This is especially the case in Snowgrave, where one of the blue beads is broken off due to our actions, and Radsay starts to notice, hey, this isn't how things are supposed to be. Like, the camera is supposed to just pan away and stay away for a while. Radsay especially understands, okay, there's a way things are supposed to be, and he gets weird when things aren't that way. He and the pink girl are a bit alike, but also different. They both know what's going on, but still play their role. They also both know about game mechanics, so Radsay and the pink girl are very similar in that regard, in their knowledge and how they act, at least pink girl first half of the video. However, Radsay didn't break away from the story yet. He still is very much set in the way things are supposed to be. He wants you to stay on track and dismisses anything weird going on, whether it's Snowgrave or whether it's meeting Spamton. Anything that's connected to the game or the legend not playing out as it's supposed to, something Radsay sees as an issue that should be ignored and hopes for the best that, okay, from now on things are going to be normal again. He also definitely knows that Chris and the player are different entities, even talking to Chris off screen. The last connection I want to talk about are the rims. But first, let me ask you one thing. Have you ever thought about a world where everything is exactly the same, except you don't exist? Everything functions perfectly without you. The thought terrifies me. Of course, this is Undertale, not Deltarune. What's that doing here? Well, it's a Gasta follower, connected to fun values. Gasta is very probably connected to Deltarune, at least he releases the game, so there's at least some connection there. There's also some connection to Skies Forever Blue, at least the thought is very interesting, looking at the ribbon of the girl. The pink girl has a ribbon in the original Final Time in the first half of the video. It's like a core part of her design, we see it in her sprite work and in the artworks. During the restart of the game, she loses the ribbon. On the left we can see like the ribbon being undone and flying away, and the save point we see above the pink girl on the right. That's like probably the ribbon floating in the air. Now whether there's some relevance to it being a save point, I haven't drawn a straight conclusion, and I think there would be a bit too much speculation for my taste here, but I want to point it out nonetheless. The interesting part is the ribbon stays gone after reset, which shouldn't be the case. Like, if everything in the game is reset and everything is put into its base state, the ribbon should be with her again. So, unless the pink girl acting differently is because of a ribbon, which isn't mentioned, isn't shown, we can assume isn't the case, the ribbon is gone and that alone didn't change anything. Now in Deltarune there are also two ribbons, or three ribbons, but two have the same comments. There are the pink ribbon, the white ribbon and the twin ribbon. These aren't really anything special from what we can tell. It's implied that the white ribbon is a paper shred, but when we equip Noelle with the white or pink ribbon, she says it feels familiar, and with the twin ribbons, she says it's nostalgic. Now, what could this mean? Noelle is very connected to the game Dragon Blazers. She even glitched it as a child. The game in the video could be Dragon Blazers. Noelle played it as a child, and an iconic item from it could be nostalgic. Like, imagine any owner of an ocarina in the Western world. I'm going to give you a 99% chance they are a fan of Ocarina of Time. Even if they have never had an ocarina in real life, they might see an ocarina and think, oh, that's nostalgic, that reminds me of that game I played in my childhood. What is something that is in Deltarune that has disappeared? Now, this is going to start devolving a bit into speculation, but what's something else in Deltarune that disappeared? Death. Which leads me to my conclusions and assumptions. Deltarune will break the fourth wall and be self-aware it's a game. Or else they already know this. This is like the parallel I'm going to draw between Skies Forever Blue and Deltarune. Now, for the interpretation, I think this is closely related to Noelle, known for breaking games, and Death, who disappeared like the ribbon in Skies Forever Blue. Maybe the version we have of Deltarune is glitched, like the second half of the video, where things that are supposed to be there, like the ribbon, aren't there. And the game still runs and functions and somewhat goes along the same path, but there are some deviations. Now, this could be because someone meddled with our copy of Deltarune, for example Gasta, or the person who discarded our vessel, but before I'm going to devolve into any too script. So, thank you for watching. I have one different video on this channel at the moment, which is a bit more rambly. It's like my theory about how vaguely Deltarune is going to go. Not in any grand detail, but rather like the themes of the meta-narrative and stuff like that. That has been very much informed by my interpretation of Skies Forever Blue especially, so if you want to hear me ramble about my thoughts about that topic, feel free to watch that, but if you aren't into that, I won't blame you if you don't watch it. I'm always happy about comments because I just love thinking and talking about these things. If you have like any recommendations, also always open to those. And if you think like my approach or my thought analysis is interesting and you would like to hear my opinion about something specific, I'd also appreciate that, because I have like these ideas in bursts, and if I have more ideas, maybe I have more bursts, maybe I'll turn out more videos. But anyway, enough rambling, thank you for watching, bye bye.